morning. Oh, I need a better good morning than that. It's sunny. Yay! There we go. Well, the first part of our summary today is interactive. So I want you, if you're willing, to say something with me. And when I point to you as a group, you'll have to help me tell the story and say this phrase. Everybody in? Everybody willing? Okay. The phrase is easy, and the phrase is this: remember the duck. Can you say that with me? So I have to have it all at once, so when I need you to say it, I will do this and point to you, okay? Okay, ready? Perfect. Well, the story is this. No, I'm not going to quack at you today. A little boy about age 7 and his older sister, 12, always got to go to the grandparents' farm in the summer after school was out. And they spent the entire summer at Grandma and Grandpa's farm, and they loved it. So one day, the little boy who was 7 was out, and he was just playing around with his BB gun. And he shot, didn't mean to, but he shot Grandma's favorite white duck. And I don't know where he hit it, but I'm telling you, the duck just died, okay? So the 12-year-old sister saw this, of course, and she said, I'm going to tell Grandma and Grandpa what you just did. And the little boy was, please don't tell him I didn't mean to shoot her duck. I really didn't mean to. So she said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I have a lot of chores while we're here, and you have your chores. Yeah, you got it. And she said, if you will do my chores all summer, then I won't mention anything about the duck. I said, well, okay, I guess it's worth it. And so one day, he was out playing the next day and just doing what little boys do, and it was time for chores, her chores. And he said, I don't have to do your chores. And she said, remember the duck. Oh, man. So he went to the dishes and he started doing the breakfast dishes. And then another day he would be playing and just doing his thing, and he had forgotten about the chores, and she said, oh, man. And all summer it was like that. And just, he'd be doing anything, and she would be nasty, and she'd say, finally, he said, I just can't do this. I'm bothered about it, and I need to go talk to Grandma. And she said, he said, I do remember the duck, but I need to go talk to her. So he went in, Grandma's washing the dishes, and she turned and said, well, hi. And he said, Grandma, have you noticed that your favorite duck is missing? And the sister was behind him, and she whispered. I said, no, I'm going to tell anyway. And he said, well, have you been missing your duck this summer? She said, yes, I have. He said, well, I was outside playing with my BB gun and hit the duck, and I killed the duck. And so I've had to do my sister's chores while we're here because of that, so that you wouldn't find out, so that she wouldn't tell you. And she said, you know what? I have been missing my duck. And I just want to tell you something. The very first day when you shot the duck with your BB gun, I happened to be at the window dusting a table, and I looked out and I saw that you had shot my BB duck. And you know what? I forgave you. And I know you, and I know your heart. And I told Grandpa, eventually, he will tell me what he's done. Now, I want your sister to know, who's hiding behind that counter, that you don't have to do her chores. You just go on and do your chores, and she can do her chores, and it's going to be okay because you're forgiven. What's the moral of that story? It's kind of hard to talk when lots of people are here. The moral of that story can be lots of things. It can be that no matter what we do, God sees us and he forgives us and loves us. That's one of the morals of the story. Another moral of the story, I think, is that Grandma knew the little boy's heart. She didn't jump all over him. You just killed my dog. She was kind and just waited for him to come because she knew what it was like him to do. And you know, that is a lot of what we've been teaching, what I've been teaching in the last, month or so, is that God knows our hearts. And he knows what it's like you to do. And we can know the heart of God in a life-giving, remember that? Life-giving situation, or a life-giving knowing of our God. And we talked about how we need to thrive as a church, and we went to something where my daughter was being commissioned this morning, so we went to that and then got to hear, just heard Mike's message about the last 5 minutes or so. Fabulous, Mike. Really went along with what we're teaching about community. And I just want you to know that, Mike and I are almost the same age. Okay, I'm 6 months older. He says I'm the older cousin, but I'm also the favorite. I'm his favorite. But when you grow up with somebody, and then we used to hang around with he and Cindy when we were young adults, and then time passed, we moved to a different city, kids, all of that. We lost touch, and then the last year or so, we've gained it again. I have sat here when he preached, and I have been so proud. I just think if I wore more buttons, they would be busting off. We learn about community and how we need life-giving people in life-giving community. And we've learned about thriving. Thriving has been about the following, and I'm just narrowing it down as we summarize today. Thriving is about experiencing God, not just knowing that there is a God. It's about loving one another as a church and bearing each other's burdens. And that can become richer and more natural as you learn more about receiving and giving life in balance. What we've been studying, the life model, is about doing that giving and receiving and reaching a higher level of maturity as a church and a person. We receive healing for life's inevitable traumas because they will come. And we want to know what it's like to be governed by the joy of the Lord. We didn't get much into joy. And usually when I speak somewhere, we do a whole day on joy, because God's joy intrinsically is different. The 5 crucial elements we need to thrive are a place to belong, a place to give and receive, a place to recover from traumas, and I'm going to combine maturity and learning to know your own heart today as we summarize things. Maturity, as we're going to talk about it, doesn't mean I'm 47 years old and here are the tasks I should do to do. Or my son is 15 and here are the tasks. It's not a developmental maturity that I'm going to talk about. I know men, and I'm just saying men, but I know women as well, who are in their 40s, and a young lady who might be 16, and I'm telling you, she has mastered more of the maturity tasks than the 47-year-old. We're going to learn what those are in just a moment. And we're going to learn about functioning as a thriver, because the whole thing started with thriving people, thriving church. We're going to learn what it means to know your own heart. In other words, what's it like you to do? This is not necessarily in the life model, but when I counsel people, and they're obviously, everybody comes to counseling because they're going through a rough time. Nobody comes to just, to have a cup of coffee with me, although that's nice. And they're struggling. I say, answer these 3 questions. And many times they answer them when they're sitting there, or they can answer them, write them down and answer them later at home. But when they're struggling, I say 3 questions. What is it like God to do? And often people will talk about, things from the Bible about his character. He's faithful, he's just, he's long-suffering, he's kind. But I also want to know, what is it like God to do in your life? What are his patterns? His patterns in my own life are to be faithful, but I can be really down and having a hard day. And the next thing I know, somebody, either at my office or someone I know texting me, will just say, hey, I just want to encourage you today. I just want to tell you that what you're doing is helping people. It's like God to send that message to me on a day that's hard. It's like God to do something for Jeff and I that we thought could not happen. That's what it's like God to do for us. And I encourage people to get that personal with it and say, what is it like him to do in my life? What are his patterns? What is it like God to do? Number 2, what is it like Satan to do? Well, he's a bad guy. And we know that he came to do 3 things primarily: to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So we know those 3. We also know that Jesus has called him a liar, and his father, he says, is a liar. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to turn my phone off. Sorry. His father is a liar. He's the father of lies. So we know that sometimes, and we all go through this, that the thoughts that come into our head are lies about what God is doing, or lies about ourselves that make us feel really bad. Darla, you have done a terrible job teaching these folks. You dropped the box. And when I told a group that I lead, and we've been together for a couple of years, it's our trauma group. When I told them what I did, they were laughing, and they said, "That's exactly what it's like you to do." Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. What is it like God to do? What is it like Satan to do? And if you are hearing thoughts in your head that are very contrary to God's word and the character of God, then you know they are lies. And all you have to do is, you know what? By the blood of Jesus, I cancel that out and go on. It's not a power encounter, folks. It's not a power encounter. We talked last week about resolving from traumas. Today, we're going to talk a little more about maturity and learning to know our own hearts. But let's summarize belonging. Remember, that was our very first thing. Belonging is having a family or community to belong to, and then we learned that it is so essential for someone to have that, because if we don't, we miss out on our identity, we miss out on who God really wants us to be if I'm trying to be everybody else. If I'm trying to belong somewhere and striving and striving and striving, people might choose to belong in a group that isn't really like them at all. Teenagers especially like a gang. And the question I'm asking is one that you can just think of in your mind and answer with someone if you want to. Why is it so important that people from birth to adults are encouraged to know that they belong to God and others? Put some feet to this. Why is that so important? We learned about giving and receiving. We know that unless we receive and give in our place of belonging, there will be no benefit at all to us belonging. And we receive by becoming part of God's family, which enables us to give freely. Because Jesus showed us this through his disciples and how he would give and receive. Last week we learned about trauma. I think that was probably the hardest lesson. And it was frustrating a little bit for me because so much more could be said about that. And yet, I think things were insightful. We learned that the devastating results of trauma create a need to face and erase past wounds, but not to get stuck there, to find resolution from our trauma. And that restoration is the work of God. And we can confidently say with the Apostle Paul, "And my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory by Jesus Christ." We learned about trauma, that we need to be thrivers for other people. We even got down to the nitty-gritty and we learned about things that are really not helpful to say to someone in trauma. So now today we're going to talk about maturity. When we belong, receive and give, and recover from the things that go wrong, the result is a growing level of maturity. Maturity is about, and this is such a great definition, okay? I want to give this to you and then we're going to talk about maturity. Maturity is about reaching one's God-given potential. I know a young woman who sees me every Sunday at church. I love her. I put my arms around her. Maturity is about reaching one's God-given potential. Her God-given potential is different than Dr. Neuroscientist that goes to the church. It's different. She has a different capacity that God has given her. And you do, and I do. Maturity is about maximizing our skills and talents and using them effectively and I love this, while growing into the full capability of our individual designs. I don't have to be just like someone in this congregation that I just think is great. I can think that person is great. But God has designed me individually. I may not do the same things another person does. In other words, I'm trying to find like a really skinny little person. There, you in stripe. Hello, you're a beautiful lady, but you're quite slight, okay? I'm not going to say anything bad to you, don't be afraid. You are a slight person, okay? I'm a rather large person. Your clothes will not fit me. As beautiful as they are, they're not going to fit me. If I try to button them, the buttons will rip off. I can't pull up your pants, okay? And my clothes are not going to fit you. And you might like them even, but they're not going to fit you. That's how it is in the body of Christ. Somebody else's personality isn't going to fit you. And if they try on yours, it may not fit them. Oh, there are traits that we can model. But it's reaching God's definition of maturity for us. Now, do you have those handouts? I'm going to give this to you, and it's hard, but I don't want you to fill it out right now, okay? So I'm going to give you something called the Maturity Guide. And I'll take one so that I can explain it to them. You don't have to turn them back in because it's not like I'm scoring them or something. It's not a test. It's an assessment. When everybody gets theirs, I just want to explain how you can do it, should you choose, when you're home. I want to tell you, it's ever changing too. Not the things on the maturity guide, but I'm ever changing in some areas. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, let's look at, open it up and take a look first at the infant stage. What this is basically saying, along with all the other ones, is that these things should have happened for us when we were infants. Now, do you remember? Of course you don't. But you know your mother, if she's still living. You know what kind of environment you grew up in, right? So you can answer these, no, sometimes, usually, or always. And I'm trying to think one of these that I flunked. I just lost it. Okay, number 3. I'm in the third phrase down. Important needs were met until I learned to ask. Okay, now that happened for me, but later you'll see that one of the statements is, I can ask for what I need as an adult. I didn't do well on that one. And that was, I think, about 3 years ago. So I decided I'm going to do better at that. I'm not going to be obnoxious, hopefully, but I might say to someone, if we're in the same room, like the kitchen, Mike, the packets of tea are right there. Would you mind tossing one to me? And he's absolutely happy to do that. But I wouldn't ask previously. And so I practiced being able to ask for things. So the infant stage is important because those things needed to happen. So if you have checked a no or a sometimes, it means that maybe you haven't had that experience. And also that we can look at this and say, okay, here's an area I need to work on. Now, we don't see that a whole lot in the infant stage, but let's look at the child stage for a minute. The first one, I can do things I don't feel like doing. Do you know how, well, not do you know, because you don't know, but you would be surprised, I bet, at the number of people that sit across from me during a counseling week. I don't ask them this right away, but pretty soon I begin to see that they are not really getting better because they can't do hard things. I can't lift 7 blocks of cement at the same time. That's not the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is about emotional maturity. I can do hard things I don't feel like doing. I've learned over the years that pretty much I can. I can do hard things even if they cause me pain. And I want to explain the next one. I can separate my feelings, my imagination, and reality in my relationships. Anybody who takes this, they almost always ask me what that means. Here's what it means. I walk in today. Yeah, I was late, so Jeff and I stood back there. And this kind lady, I don't know your name, but I like your blouse. Suzanne? Okay. Suzanne walks by me, and I've seen her before. And I say, hi, Suzanne. And she says, hi, Darla, and keeps going. My feelings might say to me, and we're going to pretend that I'm a weekly attender here. My feelings might say to me, gosh, what's wrong with Suzanne? Or, what's wrong with me? I mean, am I unbuttoned somewhere, or drop something, or I look funny? And then my imagination starts to work on that. Maybe during the sermon, although it's great. Or maybe after I get home. You know, that's Suzanne. She's a pretty nice person, really nice, actually, but she was offish to me. I bet she thinks I've done something wrong. I bet she's criticizing me. In her head, I bet that's the case. And if I think about something like that long enough, it becomes reality to me. And so I come in next Sunday, and Suzanne says, hi, Darla. Hi, Suzanne. I keep walking. And then anytime I see her over the following Sundays, hi, Darla. I just keep walking. Because my imagination has told me that she doesn't like me anymore. And if she doesn't like me, I don't want to be around her. Do you want to be around somebody who doesn't like you? Instead of that first Sunday, going to Suzanne and saying, Suzanne, you don't sound the same as usual. Are you okay? And Suzanne might say, I have got the worst headache today. And I would realize, just like that, that it's not me. That's what that means. And sometimes it sounds in the child section like you're still a child, like I'm growing in the things that I'm good at doing. But you know, we all can grow in the things we're good at doing until we're 150 or 151. The parent stage basically means I can take care of myself and one or two others. But the questions are getting a little tougher as far as emotionally. I am present with my family. I receive guidance from elders. And elders does not mean an elder of a church. And it doesn't mean an old person. It means someone who has mastered most of these tasks. I help my children mature. I'm calming to my family. A lot of us might get a usually, or I'm sorry, a no or a sometimes. And don't feel bad about it, but if you do, just know that's something I need to practice. I need to practice being present when I'm at home. The elder stage, again, does not mean you are age-wise an elder, like there's a cutoff at 55 and then you're an elder. You can have mastered the qualities of an elder when you're 35. And it doesn't mean you're going to be on an elder board. It just means that you have mastered those tasks. But the elder stage means I know I don't just master and work on mastering the other tasks, but I can help a community. And I'm part of a community. I'm recognized by my community. I help my community mature. I bear well under misunderstandings. I see some of what God sees in every situation. You're not going to be able to check all those. If you can check all those, you better just go to heaven and let the rest of us be. And then there's the adult stage again, which means I can care for I can care for people in my community. Just a minute. That's probably not taping anymore, is it? Okay. I can bring, near the bottom, I can bring 2 or more people back to joy at the same time. So I walk in the room and a couple people are just, whoa. And it doesn't mean I start telling knock-knock jokes. And I know a lot of them because I have grandsons and they know a lot of knock-knock jokes. It means that I can begin to talk to those people and know that I don't have to just minimize their trouble, but that I can somehow be a joy giver. And it can happen a lot in a counseling office. The things that people tell us are heavy. I walked into our little kitchen at work this week, and I didn't know if something had happened or what, and I said, there were 3 ladies in there that are counselors. I said, you guys okay? Did something bad happen? No, it's just the day. It's like, I don't think I can hear one more thing. Bringing them back to joy means that I'm able to sit down at the table and say, you know what? I have felt that before. And of course, we don't tell each other another person's issues. Some people tell me because I'm the director of counseling. So they bring things they're not quite sure of how to solve to me. And of course I say, thank you. I have no idea. But even by saying that, what did all of you do? Just now, what did all of you do? You laughed. Doesn't mean I'm great at making people laugh. But it means that there's something that lifts the mood in another person, a husband, a wife. So you're going to do all of that. If you're thinking about getting married and you're not, then pre-marriage one is a good one to do. Before I leave today, I'm going to leave my business card with my email on it. Is that okay? Good. I would. Okay, I kind of asked forgiveness before permission. And if you get snagged on a couple of these or anything, just write to me and I'll write back to you, okay? So, we're doing pretty good. 15 minutes? Okay. This is the time when I want to tell you, first of all, what the third question is. The third question is, what is it like me to do in the tough situation you might be going through? And you know what? Even though you think, well, that's strange, you know what it's like you to do. You know that it's like you to run to the Lord. You've been doing it for years. You know that it's like you to take a walk and clear your head. And there are all kinds of different things that it's like you to do. When I'm in a session with somebody, as time goes on, I don't usually write. The Lord has given me the ability to remember pretty much a lot that they say, and I do dictate it later at the end of the day. But the point being, sometimes I'll take out a legal pad, and I'll say, I'm just going to jot down a couple things. I'm not jotting down that you need to go to the Bowen Center or somewhere to be admitted. I'm just jotting down a couple things I want to read to you at the end of the session. Okay? Pretty soon they forget. And I do just carefully jot things down. At the end, I say, I just wanted to tell you I've been writing, and here's what I've written. I've written what it's like you to do. And I've got a huge list because I've done it several other times. It's like you to be courageous. It's like you to call on God. It's like you to fight the enemy. It's like you to be kind. Because sometimes I forget, or I don't know what it's like me to do. And as Christians in the church, not this church, but the overall church, aren't we raised that it's kind of prideful to say something good about yourself? I don't want to say to anybody I'm brave. But the truth is, maybe I have been. I was getting ready to go somewhere, I don't remember exactly where it was. And a client texted me. She said, Darla, I'm working here and it's really hard. I'm having a hard day. Please tell me who I am. And I remembered immediately some of the things, and I just wrote a list, big list to her. She said, thank you. I can get forward now and do what I need to do. What is it like God to do? What is it like the enemy to do? And what is it like you to do? And you don't even have to tell anybody else that you're brave. But you know there are circumstances in which you have been brave. Those are the 5 things, and maturity, but community being the last one. And it's important to have community together, but community to talk about these things. You don't have to share your darkest hour. Jeff and I were in a small group, our first small group ever. And it was before either of our children were born, so it tells you kind of we were youngish. And the leader of the group said, okay, first question to all of you. I want you to turn to the person on your right, and I want you to tell them the darkest hour of your life. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry, but I'm not telling, nice person, but I'm not telling her the darkest hour of my life. That's too much. And I think around that circle, if you remember, Jeff, I don't think anybody did it, did they? They were all like, okay, when do we go? When's the snack? We're going to go home. I just want the snack. But a small group can be a place where gradually you begin to know one another. And you have that community. And just this week, a client was in the office and she said, I'll never join a small group because I've been hurt badly by something someone said in a small group. And I said, okay. Can you believe I paid for schooling to just say, okay, and I don't know? We talk more about it later. So I want you to think about questions that you might have over the times that we've been together. Or right now, or things that are even off topic, if you need to. I don't know hardly anything about wildlife, really, so don't ask me things like that. We had belonging, we had giving and receiving, we had trauma. And this week we're looking at maturity and community. Yes.
Is that in the infant stage? Is that a lot of the traumas in the world is let the imagination take over?
It can. The infant stage really is made to give us a cue of what we needed but didn't have. And thank you for asking that, because I remembered that I didn't tell you something. I'm sorry, I'll repeat could you repeat what you said?
We need it for the video.
Okay. Okay, so this beautiful lady over here has been such a joy to me, by the way. And she asked, in the infant stage, does it mean, and what were you asking? What,
Part of imagination, is that normally for a lot of people?
yes, she was asking if part of the imagination and the way we use it is normal for a lot of people. It is. Have you ever walked past somebody you knew pretty well and they kind of seemed like they snubbed you? But the maturity part is what we do with it. I'm going to ask that person how they're feeling today. Okay, good question. Instead of assuming. Right. She said, where you are when you assume, and that's so true. And if I'm assuming, it usually doesn't go to a good place. Anybody else with a question or a statement even, something you'd like to say?
But if you don't really see that you belong to it, then it's not really doing you any good.
Correct.
Okay.
Her question was in community. You can belong to a community, but it doesn't seem like you do
Yeah.
at all.
Like sometimes I think I will feel like I don't belong because I'm not doing things the right way. I'm not
Uh-huh.
doing socially acceptable things, or oh, I said the wrong thing there.
Right.
So I'll feel uncomfortable in my community because I am perceiving that
Yeah.
I don't fit, even though, like my husband would point out, that I fit more than I think I do.
Sure.
But if my brain is not understanding that, then I am always searching for belonging.
Sure.
So,
And yeah, that's imagination. Thanks, Mike. But the other thing it also is that you have a tough time receiving from people, really receiving. And so that would be a task in here that you read that you'd want to work on. I need to learn to receive when somebody tells me I did a good job.
That receiving, is that also maybe a part of, that you're not independent?
I mean, I think you're right. She asked if receiving could be, the inability to receive could be that I'm just too independent. That, yes, I think that could. But more often, it's like this young lady said, you know, it's the lies that we hear, and they are, I am or I am not. Anybody else? Absolutely.
So here's my question slash thought of belonging. What if you don't actually belong and you have trauma because you're trying to force yourself to belong somewhere where you actually don't belong, but you are following the Christianese, which is all about, well, you have to, you know, bloom where you're planted. That's not Christian, but like, you know, bloom where you're planted, or like force yourself because, you know, God put you there, so therefore you have no choice. Like, those are all like, okay, you're forcing yourself to belong because God put you there. It's very, very tangly and knotty
And lots of layers to that. So I don't know if you're talking about yourself or not. I don't need to know. But that person who feels that, you know, they're in, as far as they know the Christianese, they know the stuff they're supposed to do. Don't run in church. You know, Michael, you remember, we heard that. Don't run in church. These things that are probably that was a bad, you know, example. But the things that you really don't want to do, but you do because you want to belong. Maybe not you, but that person. That's hard. If that person told me that, I would probably say, well, do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? And if they said, absolutely, I do, but I just don't like to do all these things, I would say, then let one person know who you really are. And then might say, find a place where there are people who think the way you do, if you can. And I'm not talking about the movement right now that is it deconstructing the church? Is that what it's called? I'm not talking about that movement. I don't know if I answered your question or not, because there are a lot of layers to that. Yeah.
like if you're seeing one person, does it have to be in that community, or can it be outside of that community? Okay.
Yeah, the point is to thrive, you know, that bottom line, did the first week, I need a relationship with Jesus Christ, remember that? And a relationship in community. And it can be one other person. If you're kind of an introvert and don't want to be with a group of 6 people, just even one other person where you find some community. I have a really close friend. Her name is Mary. We have made sure that we are never in church together, sitting together. Why? Because we laugh. There's something about it that triggers our laughter mechanism, and it could be very offensive. And so we say, love ya, see you after church. And I'm going to sit by someone who's more sedate. Where are we at? We have about 5. Okay, so I need to let you go. Every group I speak to, when they leave and I am done with them, I want to first of all tell you, there we go. I want to first of all tell you, you have been one of the greatest audiences ever. You listen really well. Did you know that? You look at me. You laugh at dumb things I tell you.
They're used to that.
Good, yeah. You don't hate me. You let me come back when I drop your box. You really, honestly have been great. And I tell people that when they say, how'd it go this week? I say those people are beyond wonderful, and Jeff has said that to others too. So I want to read you from Numbers to just dismiss you. The internet is not great in here. I'm going to quote it, even though, like another time you need to be gracious is right now, because I may leave part of it out. And it's from Numbers, I think 5, I'm not sure. And whenever I do it, whether I'm in Africa or next door, I get a little, menopausal. I get a little menopausal. But I mean it. Gonna miss you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace. You're wonderful. Be a thriving church. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Before we go, Darla called me before the first session, and she said, this is what I thought. She said, should I reschedule? Should I cancel? What do you do? And my word for her, you will said Michael. She always has called me Michael. I don't know if that's because I'm always in trouble.